Hello and welcome to this week's 52 Weeks. This week we're continuing in Chapter 8, which is Economic Development. We've reached the point in the Economic Development chapter to look at recommendations for the city of Harrisburg to consider as three main priorities. Priority number 1 is the maintenance industry. Priority number 2 is strengthening the transportation hub. And priority number 3 is expand Harrisburg's private business sector. This week's segment will be focusing on priority 1, which is the maintenance industry. Quote from the comp plan, outside the downtown, the city we see today was built in the boom from the 1870s to 1929, and 89% of its buildings were built before 1959. All of these areas are now, by definition, historic districts. Continuing with a quote, the city's boom period produced handsome, architecturally consistent neighborhoods. However, almost all of the neighborhoods suffer from significant deterred maintenance. And there's a quote referring back to Chapter 5, the housing chapter. In the housing chapter, analysis conservatively calculated the current level of deferred maintenance in the housing stock at $300 million. And it is likely much greater than that. Continuing this discussion, with the maintenance of existing building assets requiring at least $150 million per year, the city finds itself with potential to develop an internal economy equivalent to an industry sustaining at least 3,000 jobs at $50,000 compensation. So if we look at that number, this would place the maintenance industry as the city's third largest employer after Pinnacle Health in the state of Pennsylvania. Unlike the state and Pinnacle, this job creation exclusively targets city residents, meaning that's what its focus is for, both internally for skill development, high skill development, as well as who it's going to affect. These are new jobs that will not overlap existing workforces. So we can develop a whole new economy that's not going to interrupt anything else that we currently have. This is extremely important because of this quote that says, these local jobs cannot be consolidated, they cannot be moved, nor can they be outsourced. But what we have found and what we continue to find is these jobs are sourced from other areas outside of the city. However, this opportunity can be pushed aside by outside forces, as with some current renovations and rehabilitation. Additionally, this work has the potential to grow into higher tech, higher skill to provide expertise in adaptive reuse, historic building structures, and architecture. This is a whole economy developed from within and how we see our existing buildings and the value within them. A clear conclusion of the planning effort is the presence of a large job gap in the city for skilled people who can maintain buildings and infrastructure. And this is not just labor, this is actually high skilled and focusing on property management and the coordination of these things. We recognize that there are gaps that exist. This is in the regional job skills gap, as well as something that's happening in the state and nationally. These gaps within the building trades and fine construction skills. We also have a graying of the building trades industry. So there's a gap in ages and who is stepping into the building trades sector within our nation. So what the comp plan shows us as a community, that there's a sustainable jobs creation opportunity led by the city and community members citywide. This is in training skills for property maintenance and management. These skills can be exported to surrounding communities, also in need of services. Facilities management and maintenance jobs are in permanent demand. We're always going to need to take care of the physical assets that are around us. And how do we continue to value them and put value back into them? And as what was mentioned in the introduction segments, maintenance is unglamorous but extremely valuable and value generating for the city and its residents. However, it provides immediate opportunity for employment of the large and underemployed population of youth and young adults, as well as any returning citizens. See the housing chapter for detail of the skills training, the jobs creation, and property ownership maintenance associations. And as we're in priority number 1, we're looking at some objectives. Objective 8.2.2, implement a suite of related economic development programs that simultaneously address the compound conditions that prevent legacy building stocks from performing in their intended function of providing high-quality housing and thriving neighborhoods. So we really want to look at economic development and focus on high-quality housing. This is dignified housing for all, and also thriving neighborhoods. This is an understanding of economic capacity and where we need to be thriving. We're just not there yet. I would even say that the idea of thriving needs to be qualified by some sort of agreed upon measurement within the neighborhoods. Because when we look at issues of gentrification and displacement, we're going to see continued pressure from the outside as Harrisburg is seen as a place to focus on and do new development and revitalization. So this is going to put a focus on the city, its neighborhoods and residents, and we've got to be very careful on how this is contextualized so that it's done together, that you're doing it with us and not doing it to us. So what does that look like? The simultaneous implementation of community development tasks. This is in the development of strong, sustainable community cores, focus on where these are at around our city. Provisions of wide range of affordable quality rental and housing options. Again, this is the dignified housing and affordability. This needs to be discussed. And we also have quality streetscape and public space as a context for the housing. So we have the places that we do the living, working, and playing all together in the city. Continuing this, to accomplish these tasks, the planning must address the following items: a citywide building renovation and long-term maintenance, mixed-use community commercial cores to provide goods and services. In each community commercial core, that should be employment opportunities, unique regionally attractive futures, and also providing transit options that connect the community cores to the city and the region. This is a critical slide for the what next. So any small area plans that communities are thinking about or starting, this is a good slide to start from, is to look at how do we build from here. If you set up the planning process so that it's public participatory planning and it's a grassroots effort, focus on these things and know where the gaps are. Having a plan will make the process easier because you can see where people plug in. The very issue we have now is there's chaos because there's so much uncertainty and no one knows where they need to be or what to continue or what to connect. So in that chaos, that's where the communities continue to flounder. Getting a plan together and knowing where our mission and vision is and developing these community cores is essentially the starting point. This pulls into action 8.2.2.1, implement a policy and associated financing programs to fund restoration or adaptive reuse of existing building stocks wherever possible. And action 8.2.2.2, target new construction and plan development on existing vacant properties. These are things that we've talked about in the past and make sense through the housing chapter and vacant land and open space. A quote from the comp plan: new affordable housing construction must de-emphasize housing as fee-simple individual properties and begin to look at the housing stock as systems of occupiable space that require systems of service and maintenance. This emphasis must move from the homeownership to performing properties, performing socially, economically, and environmentally. Again, there's the triple bottom line: the people, place, and economics. Continuing with Objective 8.2.3, funding the maintenance industry. Assessing latent value in the city's existing stock is the process. And a couple action items. Action 8.2.3.1, target maintenance industry at existing properties to maintain aggregate value of city property. Action 8.2.3.2, consider a demolition tax to equal the replacement value of the building to be demolished. This is important to pull these action items together. The city must aggressively address deferred maintenance in the Hill District and River District east of 3rd Street neighborhoods before the city loses large swaths of attractive, desirable building stock. These areas of intensely deferred maintenance are linked to decades of systemic disinvestment. Addressing these areas is critical before irreplaceable building stock is lost. Continuing on with Action 8.2.3.3, establish sources of long-term financing for city projects targeted for the creation of high-quality housing buildings. Quote from the comp plan: the city could support creation of an HRA-administered fund to facilitate high-quality housing in anticipation of rapid appreciation. A $300 million revolving fund would provide $50,000 each to renovate 6,000 houses, and also aggregate property appreciation of 14% would directly recapture the investment, moving the average housing sale price to just over $100,000. Objective 8.2.4, promote new construction as permanent sustainable structures. Quote from the comp plan: there's a clear demand for rental apartments and condominiums. The city lacks new market rate apartments. One strategy of the comprehensive plan is to facilitate construction of a variety of high quality, well-managed apartments in various parts of the city. Goal 8.3, maintain streetscapes. From the data gathered from the community meetings, the quality of neighborhood structures matters deeply to the citizens attending the public engagement workshops. It also matters as the first impression to potential investors and as a factor in real estate valuation. It is not that difficult to see that place matters, and it matters because of people, place, and economics and how they interrelate. And within that objective, Action 8.3.1.1, as a short-term action, provide facade crews to provide immediate aesthetic improvement to facades, porch, window, and door restoration, painting, cornice, and wood detailing repair. This is what we could do in our small area plans and go through and collectively assess where we're at and what needs maintenance. This could be done all in the short term. While this is done in the short term, the long-term planning needs to be set up to look at the structures to support this process in funding and job skills. Action 8.3.1.2, focus streetscape improvements on A Street, B Street couples, where the major vehicular street is paired with a parallel street that can be highly pedestrianized while retaining capacity to carry limited vehicular traffic. An example of these types of street, the A streets are 13th Street and a string off of Catherine and Argyle, and the B streets are the alternative streetscapes for play and the neighborhood cores. Goal 8.4, create sustainable organizations. This is for long-term management of city property. Alright, this goes back to the triple bottom line in sustainability. The city should support the creation of a variety of property maintenance groups throughout the city, focus on building skills training, and providing affordable neighborhood reinvestment. The creation of legacy neighborhood improvement organizations will benefit the city far into the future. So we look at this from the next 2 decades. This is important in this legacy that we pass along to the next generation. Some more action items within Goal 8.4. Action 8.4.1.1. Create localized neighborhood development corporations, NDCs, to organize new construction. Action 8.4.1.2. Provide expertise in continued learning connecting with organizations. These are HHA and HRA, the Housing Authority and the Redevelopment Authorities. Action 8.4.1.3. Use facilities maintenance software to coordinate work within scheduled time, budget, costs for replacement, and service. This is where this network of community learning can begin. We have this framework that helps groups work together and help to collectively manage the properties within the neighborhoods.